Good evening. I'm Harry Keeling, and on behalf of the Alaskan Aviation Safety Foundation and Alaska Public Media, welcome to Hangar Flying. Tonight we welcome back Ralph Gibbs, who's the brand new Director of Aviation Technology at University of Alaska Anchorage. He's got an unbelievable background in flying, military flying, civilian flying, and aviation education. And it's nice to have him on the show, and it's nice to have him at the UAA campus leading that group of whom we're very proud. Ralph, welcome back.
Thank you, sir.
So let's talk about an idea that you have. First of all, start out with talking about the Colgan accident and what happened as a result of that.
So in 2009, there was an accident involving Colgan Air, which was a continental regional carrier. All souls on board were lost, and the result of that accident started with the families of the passengers and the folks on the ground that were also affected. The families went to Congress, and they were concerned about this accident, although it was initially reported as being caused by icing and autopilot use in icing, which in that type of model series and aircraft should not have occurred. Congress responded to the families by directing the FAA to make changes in the minimum hour requirements for Part 121 air carrier pilots. So the FAA mandated from that point going forward that all pilots would have to have an ATP. Previously, the captain had to have an airline transport pilot certificate, an ATP, which requires a minimum of 1,500 hours. However, the co-pilot, the first officer, could be hired into the right seat with a commercial certificate, which generally only takes 250 hours. By mandating that both pilots had to have 1,500 hours, it meant that the airlines had a more difficult time in finding pilots to fill the right seat. The airlines went to the FAA and said, "We can't live with this. We're already parking airplanes due to a lack of pilots." And so the FAA came up with 3 tiers of restricted ATP. And with the restricted ATP, the airlines could hire that person into the right seat. The 3 tiers were: military trained pilots could take their restricted ATP at 750 total hours instead of 1,500. Someone who went to a community college that had an aviation program approved by the FAA with 30 plus semester hours of aviation coursework could take their restricted ATP at 1,250. And if you went to a university program such as UAA, you could get your restricted ATP at 1,000 hours. And so we at UAA have that 1,000 hour restricted ATP. One of the things that, in listening to all the communications, the families hired a watchdog group to make sure that this restricted ATP was never rolled back. My thoughts, my suggestions to the regional carriers has been, why not suggest to the FAA that for any university graduate who attended a program that was based on a military-style flight training, such as we just discussed last week, that those graduates could be given the 750-hour restricted ATP. And by doing so, they would get pilots in the right seat that much faster, 750 hours faster. And so I think that that's one thing that we could do to mitigate the effect of the restricted ATP policy.
So what do you need to do? What can you do in your current position? I mean, is this something that needs congressional action or FAA prodding, or how do we, I mean, it's a great idea. How do we get it done?
Well, I believe that the regional carriers who are feeling the pain, so to speak, need to be pushing this with the FAA. The major carriers are getting their pilots from the regionals. So they're not feeling any pain. So it's the regionals who have the most to win or the most to lose, and I have been suggesting through articles and emails that perhaps they need to mount, I almost said an attack against the FAA, I didn't mean that, but they need to mount this initiative to get the 750-hour restricted ATP extended to the universities that are using a military-style form of academics.
You know, one of the things, Ralph, we didn't talk about, but you've got a aviation advisory group.
Yes.
And a lot of, and I happen to be on that group, but there's a lot of people there that represent some of the regional carriers here in Alaska. Be a good place to roll your idea out and get their support at the ground level.
Absolutely.
Well, unfortunately, we've wrapped up 3 pretty interesting presentations and discussions, and I got to tell you that listening to you, I'm really honored to say to welcome you to the aviation community here in Alaska, and you're going to do a great job at the helm of UAA. Thanks for being on the program.
Thank you, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed tonight's program. Until next time, fly safe.